Yeah, hi. My name is James, and I'm recording a podcast. I'm a bit out of touch. I haven't really done this a lot because I now live alone in the country. But I'm joined today by...
Trinity.
Hi, Trinity.
Hey, James. How you going?
Good, thanks. I've been actually really excited about this because I think we talked about it like 6 months ago or something. I can't remember.
I was probably in my tent, freezing cold or something like that.
And it's just to be in the back brain, October's going to be a hell month because I've got 2 jobs that peak in their workload. But I'm going to take one day off to go chat to Trinity about her adventures, which I've been following on Instagram. But I actually know you from high school, from like a long time ago. Well, I shouldn't say that. It was only like a few years ago, right?
just a few years ago.
Yeah. So we both went to Perth Mod, a school in Perth. And then what happened to you after that?
After that, I headed over to discover my roots, and I spent some time in Mexico.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I was there for about 7 years and then came back to Australia, and I was working...
7 years?
Yep.
Oh, my God.
Yep. And
no wonder you disappeared.
I mean, it was a great time, what can I say? But yes, and then I came back to Australia and I landed in Melbourne. I was there for a few years, and then I went to country New South Wales and had sort of just been scattered throughout country New South Wales for the past.
Right, sorry, why did you go to country New South Wales?
14 years. I initially moved to country New South Wales because of my partner at the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Chasing a boy.
Well, his work was there, so
okay.
Yeah, we were already.
What country New South Wales?
We were actually in a country town called Orange.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's where they grow oranges, right?
No, actually they grow apples.
Okay.
And cherries and wine. And
it's a town called Berry that grows oranges, right? Just to confuse people, isn't it? Berry, New South Wales?
No, I don't know. I thought. Yes. Anyway.
Right. And you were there for quite a while. Do you feel like a country girl after all that? Did you grow up in the city?
Yeah, I grew up in the city in the suburbs of Perth, not far from Fremantle. No, I wouldn't say. I guess I aspire to be a country folk woman, but I don't know if I am. But I would like to think that I am, maybe.
My best friend's wife is, I guess, Mexican, she would say, and she lives in Perth, a long way from Mexico, but she's an artist, and getting in touch with that culture, going back there, is really important to her. Like, it's in her artwork. You know, she took my best friend over there when they all met so she could say, hey, this is where I'm from. And then she's just come back from taking her son, who's just turned 17 years old, there to go back and see her roots. And it's a real focus of her art that's sort of, I guess, being taken from that culture and being brought to Australia and then trying to get back in touch with it later in life. Yeah. Is that what you really felt that you yearned to do that?
100%, pretty much exactly the same. But yeah, I think if you speak to any Mexican, you know, it's just so part of your identity that when you are separated from the country of Mexico, it hurts. I know that my mum feels that way. It's being away from Mexico for long periods of time almost feels like a loss.
Yeah.
So yeah, just because it's just such a rich culture of colour, food, just the way people are, the language, everything. It's just very full. So I think, being away from that can sometimes feel almost like a bit of a loss or grieving. Yeah.
Wow. So what did you find? Did you initially set out to just move there?
No, I did. Mum was heading over and I had the opportunity to go over with her, and I really wanted to learn Spanish. I had spoken Spanish for a brief time when I was younger, and I just really wanted to have that as a skill. Can I speak Spanish now? Very poorly. I'm very much out of practice. But you
got quite fluent during that 7 years.
I did. I was really fluent, and I was also just speaking a lot of slang as well, which was fun. Yeah, mostly now my mum will speak to me in Spanish, and then I will often just reply in English. Yeah. So I can understand more than what I can speak now. I'm just so out of practice.
All right. But you guys live on the other side of the...
My parents are based in Perth, which is why I'm here at the moment, and I am over east, in country New South Wales.
So you're mainly sort of talking on the phone most of the year. Like it's a bit different than being fully immersed in...
Yeah.
So I came across you in life because I think a post came up as a recommended post from you about you're going hiking and you're going to support a wildlife fund. So I kept it in an open tab, and I think like many months later I came back and I was like, I wonder what Trinity's up to now. And then by that time you started an Instagram account, so I was able to follow you and stalk you properly. You were like on the road walking for like a year, more than a year, maybe 14
months it was all up.
Where were you when you decided to do that?
All right. Well, so I started doing multi-day walks probably about 6 or 7 years ago, and it was after the first one that I just loved it. I just loved it so much, and it was just by chance that on the little map that you're given for this particular walk, it mentioned the National Trail. So I started kind of just looking at it, and then some Google searches were happening, and it was like the longest walk of Australia, and I was like, can you imagine? I was telling my partner at the time, can you imagine walking for a whole year? Because that's what the proposed time was for it. I took a bit longer because I continued on to Tasmania. But and I just, I was like, how much do you reckon you would need? Like, could it happen? And it sort of just kind of sat in the background for about 6 or 7 years.
So just for context of people, the National Trail, I guess the idea of it is you're basically walking the entire east coast of Australia, like an entire continent.
So the National Trail is primarily a horse trail. There is a bit of history to how it came together, but basically it follows the Great Dividing Range, and it starts up in Cooktown in Queensland and it ends in Healesville, Victoria. So they say it's 5,330 kilometres, I think, but I walked most of it. There was obviously days that I wasn't able to complete, and there were times when I did have to take alternative routes just because of weather, road closures, injuries, just to make it work in order to be able to get supplies. I was, unwell. There was just a bunch of reasons. And then when I got to Canberra as a walker, so you can do the trail on bicycle, horse, pack horse, people do it. People have done it with donkeys. But you can, as a walker, when you get to Canberra, you can then jump onto the Australian Alps walking track. If you've got horses, you're unable to do that because you're going through national parks and they're not allowed. From Canberra I jumped on the Australian Alps walking track, and then I finished that, and then I had the assistance of a walker who did the National Trail ahead of me, and she came and met me at the end of the Australian Alps walking track, and she drove me back up to the closest point to get back onto the National Trail to finish in Healesville. So for that walk I ended up, I think it was 5,260 kilometres, something like that, and then after that I continued onto the Tasmanian Trail and did another, it took me up to about 5,800 kilometres after completing that.
So how long before you began were you like, okay, I got to get serious about prepping for this? Or is it, I assume it's not something you just go quit your job and just pack a bag and then fly up to Cooktown?
The process for me was, I think, as many people were coming out of the pandemic and sort of reassessing, what was important in life. And so I kind of just made the decision that I wanted to then pursue this thing that had come up in my mind, 6 or 7 years ago. So I just sort of quietly in the background was putting things into place, and then the time came to let work know, and my bosses were extremely supportive. So from the time, I basically made the decision that this was going to happen 9 months before I started.
Okay.
But I've spoken to other trekkers, and they have they've done it up to 2 years preparation beforehand. So a lot of people, everyone does it differently, but a lot of people like to map out everything before they head off. My approach was slightly different. I wanted like as much exposure to different scenarios. So from like 9 months before, I just continued to go on as many overnight walks as possible, just to kind of expose myself to different scenarios, making sure systems were, good filtering systems, shelter systems, sleeping systems, food options, just kind of like to test everything out. And so, I kind of focused on that. Safety was another thing that I focused on. I knew also where I had to be at what time of the year, because up north you're faced with the wet season and you don't want to be walking through at that time. So they make a suggestion of when you leave Cooktown, and they also have a suggestion of where you need to be by, say, September, so you're out of the wet season further north. So I knew where I had to be at what stage, but I wasn't really mapping out all of my maps at that stage, and I knew roughly where I was going and where I needed to be, but my approach was more like, once I'm there, I will do sort of real-time problem solving. But as soon as I'd made that decision, I also started dehydrating food, because I knew I wasn't going to have enough food to last the whole year, but I thought, at least if I had some, that would assist. So just started dehydrating all of my own food and putting things into place to make sure that I could be away for an extended period of time and everything.
Because I assume you're going to be away for a year. If you're renting, you don't want to be renting.
Yeah.
If you own a house, you want to rent it out because you don't want to be paying a mortgage for a year and not living in it.
Yeah.
So it's a real commitment. Yeah,
it is. And that is one of the parts that I think is the hardest, is making that commitment for so long. Yeah. And, it is a commitment.
Like you're putting stuff in storage or something?
I did have things going to storage, yeah.
And because your whole life is now going to be in a backpack for a year.
Yep. Everything was in one backpack. It was insane. But
something like kind of freeing about that thought, though. Is that?
Yeah.
Or do you get over that free feeling where you're like, oh crap, I should have packed an extra pair of batteries or something?
Usually it was like, what can I get rid of?
Yes. Reduce the way it moves.
But I did have a few people say to me, oh, how lucky you can just kind of tap out. But my approach was really not about tapping out. It was about tapping in and having a better understanding of like how important and how wonderful life can be. It was more about, living these experiences on a daily basis. It was living the skills that I wanted to learn. I also really, it was like you mentioned, I was fundraising for a wildlife hospital. I do a lot of wildlife rescue volunteer in my community, and it was really important for me to support a cause that was important to me, my region, and something that I'm passionate about. Yeah.
Does that help you, having that sort of cause, and it's like, does that help you psychologically? Like, you're like, oh, I'm thinking of personally, I need to tap out, but I'm like, oh, I've committed to this because I'm going to help the wildlife fund. Does it help you in that way?
Yeah. So initially, I have a wildlife mentor and a wildlife rescue mentor, And when we spoke and I told her what I was about to do, we discussed fundraising for the Byron Bay Wildlife Hospital. And
you already volunteered for that organisation?
I volunteer for the Tweed Valley Wildlife Carers.
Okay.
They are a wildlife rescue organisation in the Tweed Shire in northern New South Wales. But we take our rescues to two hospitals, Currumbin, just over the border, and Byron Bay Wildlife Hospital, which is also in our region. So Byron Bay Wildlife Hospital is a newer hospital. It's not as set up, and they also lost some funding. So it was really important for me to show support to them and something that was going to directly impact our community in our region. So, but also, their efforts are to stop species ending up on threatened species lists, and so in turn that really helps all animals Australia-wide, because there are so many species going on that list quite regularly. So initially I was hesitant because at that point I didn't know if I was even going to last a week.
Yeah.
I was double guessing myself. I thought that I was a fraud. I thought that who was I to think that I could take on something like this? But a few days in, and the support that I'd had leading up to commencing was just so overwhelming that I was just like, this has to happen. This has to be this can't be just an experience that I get to keep. There has to be something else. It has to be bigger than that. And that's why I kind of was like, I'm going to go ahead with this fundraiser. It's important, and I'm just so grateful, and I've had so much support, and I've been able to raise $15,000 for the Byron Bay Wildlife Hospital, and so I'm just extremely proud about that.
The other side of that coin is that, I mean, the reason I came across you again, and I hadn't heard what you were up to in years, was that you had to obviously put yourself out there to promote, and because like obviously you could quietly just walk this thing in peace, but then when you're promoting the charity drive, you've got to really put yourself out there. Is that something you've ever done before?
To put it bluntly, it's the most I've ever been on social media. Yeah. It's not a space that I would frequent as often, but it's a tool that we use. And so and there is a bit of a community that opens up with same interests and stuff like that. So there are positives to it. Yeah.
So what's that like? Because I mean, imagine, because I'm like, I have a background in making videos and stuff, but I also see the burden in making videos, and it sort of stresses me out. And you're having to think about like you're having to think about that while I guess you got a lot of time to think when you're alone on the thing and think about, did you just have any plans, or did your methods evolve for how you're going to promote that on social media? Like, how did you approach that?
It evolved. It was what it was when it was. And sometimes I was more active, and then other times I wasn't. And when I got to Tasmania, I think by that stage I had become so desensitized to the discomforts, I kind of withdrew. Yeah. And I actually found it really difficult to even just speak to my family. I was giving my daily check-ins, which was part of my safety plan, and that's through a SAT device, and that's messages. But I had another core safety group on Facebook who knew pretty much where I would be at what time roughly, but they weren't receiving the daily check-ins. My mum was receiving those, and there was a message pop up, and they're like, "Oh, how's Trin going?" Because I just wasn't really participating with that, with the check-ins with that group. And then I replied, and I'm like, "Look, I'm really sorry. I'm just going through I'm just withdrawing a bit. I'm okay. Physically, I'm fine. Mentally, I feel okay. I'm not sad or anything like that, but I am withdrawing, and I just am really finding it difficult to connect this reality that I'm experiencing with the reality that you guys are experiencing." I don't know, people who have been following, they probably saw a lot less posts and stuff, like things that I was putting out in Tasmania, because I was struggling a bit in a different way. But it was cold. Yeah, it was cold, and I was no longer reacting to the discomforts. It was just that was a reality that I was experiencing, and because before it would be like, oh my God, work through this, but then I wasn't even reacting to it anymore. It was just, and everything was so much harder. Just the cold just made everything so much harder. Stepping out of your tent, my pack up from the warmer months was about an hour to an hour and 15 minutes. And then in Tasmania, it got to 2 hours or 2.5 hours, just because a lot of that was just mental motivation to get going in the morning. Yeah, so...
Were you just like, okay, I just got to roll with the punches, or were you actively thinking about what can I do to, I should spend more on some fancier food just to be look forward to it?
Fancier food in the towns or that I was carrying?
Buying the more expensive dried out food, like the mac and cheese rather than...
No. There was none of that. It was pretty... Look, I like to try and keep it diverse, I guess, but there were things that I could keep eating and not feel like that over or that sick of, and there were things that were just kind of I would just love it, and then I would just overdo it, and then I just couldn't eat it after a month. Yeah. So it just depended, really.
I work in a cafe in the middle of the forest, which is like basically the halfway point for the Mundabiddi biking trail and the Bibliman hiking trail. They're both 2,000 kilometre tracks from Perth to Albany.
Amazing.
And so you get these hikers come in and they're just, I think if it's not so bad for the bikers because you're doing a lot of Ks each day, so you're going from town to town, but the hikers, it's 5 days either side of us, so it's 10 days to go from one town to the other, and we're in the middle, so they just haven't had any contact for that long, and they're just like, and they come in, it's like, wait, you guys make burgers?
Yeah.
You know?
Oh my God.
And they're just like blown away.
Yes.
And it's just like, we almost don't, the burgers and that are almost exclusively for the hikers, because the people actually staying in the village usually bring their own food and cook and stuff like that, and the people who are just coming as tourists usually just want a scone and jam and cream, but the hikers go, wow, a hot meal that I don't have to worry about carrying my bag. And
oh my God, I can tell you now that those moments are just, they're bliss.
Yeah.
It's absolute bliss. Yeah, you'd walk into a town, and because the way that I was resupplying is I would have a couple of friends who were amazing, mailing out to me supplies.
Yeah.
So I would, and it's kind of, the National Trail is sort of set up that way. You move through from like town to town, or they're really small, so it could be village or even smaller. So you're going into these towns and you're heading straight to the general store, because the general store might have some supplies that you need. It also has your mail that you've had sent out to you, and often it's like a cafe, or like they've got some food, or
yes,
like,
that's exactly what we are.
And it's like, it is like, I would just walk in, and I don't know what it's like for you when they walk in. Like, what does it look like? Because I always wondered that.
It is. It's funny because they know, they're a bit quite self-conscious because they know they haven't showered in 5 days.
Yeah.
Some of them are doing very small chunks. Other people are trying to do a lot in one day and they just want to keep moving. But it's funny because I just came from working in a restaurant, which was like considered the best like one-ring restaurant in Australia, and that's pretty high-end food. And like families save up money all year and book a year ahead, so they have this amazing. And it's a pretty good product, and that's why I sort of worked there, and I kept on working there way too long, was because they would just walk out so happy about what they've spent a lot of money on. And it's funny going to see from a $400 meal to an $18 burger, and they're even more satisfied with this $18 burger. And it's a bit annoying. We're so remote, we don't do like hot chips, which people get a bit annoyed about, but just our burgers are really big to compensate for the fact you don't get chips.
Okay.
Because we can't deal with all the oil and stuff. But
I don't know if this happens with the hikers that come into where you work, but like for me, it was just like everything was just like, that's great, that's amazing. Like it's just like your expectation was so low that like the fact that you had a burger is just amazing. Who cares there's no chips? Like, don't worry about that. Like, oh my God, you've got a burger? Yes, please.
Yes. Yeah, and that's why I guess I get addicted to these jobs that I don't know, sometimes I'm like, why am I working it? But the people pleaser in you is just like, oh, I just have to cook them a burger and they just love you.
Yeah. No, and just laundry, like I just remember, I think the first time I'd washed my clothes after like, I don't know, it was a big stint, I think. Mm-hmm. Like I think it was over 10 days, and I had like usually, and this is what happens when you live life on the trail, is there's the trail version of you and then there's the at-home version of you. And the at-home version of me is like, I like my washing to be done with like eco-friendly essential oils, like all that kind of stuff. And then like when I first got my laundry done, I'm like, put the most floral, fake smelling stuff you can in that washing machine, and I just want that smell to last for as long as possible, because it's just like, because your clothes can smell just so bad.
Actually, it reminds me of this hiker the other day. She came in, she was one of the people who came in, ordered a burger straight away, but she was going to stay the night, and she, I gave her the keys to the hiker's facilities, and it disappeared. And then another lady came in not long after her and said, "Oh my God, you're my favorite person." I'm like, do I know you? And it's like, yeah, you just made me a burger, like. And I didn't recognise her because she'd just had a shower, done her hair. She looked like a completely different person. And I was really embarrassed that I didn't recognise her because while she was eating a burger, we did get chatting, and it was only like literally an hour later, she looked like a completely different person.
Yeah.
And she didn't look bad before. It's just, you know.
Yeah, no, I do know. I do know.
So we talked about Tasmania being cold, but you started up way north, which was, you were going through heat.
Yeah, so it was, it was, and I think I knew that I would probably finish the National Trail sometime leading into winter, and I wanted that full experience of like experiencing all of the seasons while I was out on trail. But pretty much for me, I started when it was hot up north, and then I continued, and I basically just continued in hot weather the entire time up until probably it would have been until I hit autumn, until I hit Canberra. I remember that there was like a definite change with like how things were, you know, the National Trail all the way up to Canberra, and then getting on the Australian Alps walking track. It was just like that was warm, and then it was autumn, and then just going into the cold for the rest of the time. But
and you're going up high.
Yes, exactly. So I think I ended up being like warm weather. It would have been from May 2023 to March 2024. That's basically like, yeah. It probably got a little bit cooler just before heading into Canberra. But for the majority of that time I was just in constant warm weather because we had those heat strokes coming through.
Heat strokes.
I mean, sorry, we had those
That's
heat
a Freudian
waves.
slip.
We had those heat waves coming through.
I was about to say, I mean, maybe because you didn't post that much in Tasmania when you were struggling, but the one time I was actually worried about you was like, you post this video where you just like pan the camera around and there's just nothing but like fields of green, and there's all these flies, and you're just like, it is 400% humidity right now. And I'm like, and you're sweating, and you're talking about worrying about having enough water to not be dehydrated. And I was like, oh, should we be worried about you? You know?
Yeah.
I know it's like, it's funny that just detachment of Instagram, you're just kind of a character. But then you go, well, is she playing it up, you know, to help get some dollars for the fire thing, or is she actually about to die here?
I hope I wasn't about to die, but no, there was a time where I definitely experienced heat exhaustion. It just, because that's the thing that happens. It's like, it's not just one day, and the reason I think I had that little Freudian slip was because it was during that time of that heat wave, and it's like each day was hot. So if it was just like a one-off really super hot day, it would have been okay. But because I'd been moving through a series of really hot days, I didn't realise how much it was taking a toll on me each day. And so I think it was like day 3 or day 4, and then it was like really hot, and there was just like no shade. I did kind of have this moment of experiencing heat exhaustion, but I was really lucky. There was another trail not far off in Main Range National Park, and a trail guide was kind of running through there. They have like guided tours, walks as well. So he was like moving through between their locations, and he came past me, and he actually asked if I was okay because I was sprawled out under this tiny bit of shade, which was nothing. It was just, it wasn't even really shade, but it was all I had.
Yeah.
And he explained that he had done the Appalachian Trail, and he said, look, I don't have any liquids on me right now, but I'll see what I can do, and if I come back and see you on the road or whatever, I'll pull up and stuff. And I was like, thank you, that'd be awesome, because at that point I was carrying water, but the water was boiling hot because it was so hot. So the water temperature was just so warm, even though I had water, and it was just, and so I was like, look, I'm okay, I've got water right now, but it's just extremely warm, and it's yeah, it was not tasting very nice either, but that's whatever.
No, I didn't even think about that.
So yeah, he did find me. I kind of pulled myself together, gave myself a couple of hydrolytes, just gave myself a moment. And then he found me further down the road, and he brought me like a Gatorade and 2 fresh bottles of water, and I just smashed them. And and he just kind of stuck with me for a little bit until the change was immediate. Like as soon as I had that Gatorade, I was just like, it was like I was a new person.
It's amazing how sometimes it can scarily sneak up on you. Like the one time I've ever felt like I've got myself into trouble was, and I wasn't backpacking, I was just on a road trip going to places to hike, and I was going to this like mountain in the middle of nowhere out near Kalgoorlie, and I'd driven like, I don't know, 1,000 Ks that day just driving, and I just didn't realise how much I hadn't been drinking enough while I was driving to the mountain, and was dehydrated. And I took a heap of water with me up the mountain, but I should have made sure I drank a heap before I even started, and then started with the 2 litres in my backpack.
Yeah.
Because I got up halfway up the mountain and I realised I've run out of water, and I'm starting to feel like I've got a headache and stuff like that. And I'm in the middle of nowhere. I think it's a place called Peak Charles. It's literally like just flat plains, like almost like the Nullarbor, and you're just in this little rock. There's these 2 rocks there, and the main one's called Peak Charles. And I've driven in my like tiny little car on this 4-wheel drive track, and amazing I made it in. And there is a campground there, but I was the only one there. And I realised I got stopped, and I'm like, I'm not sure that I can make it to the top. And I'm like, I'm really stubborn. I'm like, no, I can make it to the top. But I'm like, if I get stuck up there or pass out dehydrated, no one's going to come find me. There's no one here. There's no one. Like, I'm out near Norseman in the middle of nowhere all alone. And so I actually decided to, that's the one time where I'm like, I have to turn around and go home. And funny, by the time I got to the bottom of the mountain, other people had started turning up at the car park, so I would have been found, hopefully. But you just didn't know. And it was amazing how it sneaks up on you.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think
you feel like you're feeling the same kind of procedures you do at all your normal other hikes, but yeah.
Well, that's the thing, like, you're just faced with so many, like, you're generally faced with the same circumstances, but then you also have each day has different factors, like, that are, you know, how well you feel, what aches aching, what's the weather doing, how much water do you have at that present time, how much food do you have, what choices do you need to make water last, what choices do you need to make your food last. Like, everything is like real-time problem solving. And what you explained just then was you being like, okay, how do I need to tweak my plan now, because I need to adjust for so that this doesn't turn into a bad situation. And that's exactly what I was doing all the time. Just like, you know, seeing what was going on and then like adjusting accordingly. I guess that's what you got to do. So
the big famous walking trail in WA is the Bibbulmun Track, and they sort of have these hikers' huts every 20 Ks or so throughout the thing. So there's
Love
a real,
huts.
they're a real goal. But I assume that most of what you're walking is a horse trail. Do they have simple 20K daily goals that give you a target? Yeah, the days are roughly 25, but they can go up to 35. Yeah. There has been times where I couldn't make that goal, and on the National Trail it's not always huts. Mostly it's not huts. It's just like once you have your maps, you're given a description and told with your maps that are also you can get GPX for where you're camping. Often you'll be on private property as well, so you have to give them the heads up. So the National Trail is like a lot of logistics, and it's like ongoing daily logistics. So you're calling ahead to landowners and stuff like that. And is that signposted, or do you have like a little book that's a guide? You have a guidebook. Mine was digital. I had the digital version, so I had it on my phone. But, you know, sometimes a lot of the stations there isn't like reception, but there, for example, I remember a time where I wasn't going to make it to
the camp where I was supposed to get to, but I was moving through a station and they had their phone number at kind of one of the gates, because if you're a visitor, often for biosecurity, you have to let them know when you're coming through. But if you're just staying on the road, it's usually fine. But I knew I wasn't going to make it to where I needed to go, so I called that number and I'm like, hey, I'm on the National Trail, and they knew exactly what it was. Yeah. And I said, is it cool if I pull up somewhere on your property, on your land to, pitch my tent or whatever? And they were like, yep, wherever you see is totally fine. And yeah, that was part of it, is that a lot of people who are on the National Trail, they're aware of it and they're so helpful, and they're so they look out for you. Like if you come across people, often they'll check in, and I think that was one of the things that I found most surprising, is the generosity of the strangers who were just willing to make sure that you succeeded on whatever quest you were on. And they were like, do you need water? Especially with the, I think, pack horses and the trekkers with the pack horses, they're so generous, and there's lots of really positive stories of like helping out horses when they're in trouble and things like that. So the culture of the trail it's really very special.
Yeah, that's another thing you overhear in the cafe a lot from the hikers, is like, hikers are the coolest people, man. Like, I guess it filters out the dodgies. I don't know.
Look, I don't know.
All those crazy people, the people are trying to do the whole thing in 2 days, and they don't stop to talk to anyone. But
yeah. Look, I think everyone has their own style and wants and needs out of it, and everyone's motivations for doing something are different. So the way that it plays out is going to be different for every person.
Did you walk with other people at various times?
Yeah, I did. I was lucky. I actually did one day with a girl I'd met on the trail. They'd helped me out again when I was a bit wobbly on my feet. Actually, I think there was a few times I was wobbly on my feet, but anyway, she helped me out, and her co-worker to help me find a camp spot as well, because again, I wasn't going to make it to where I was supposed to get to, and she knew of the trail. And later on, she suggested doing a day on her horses. So we actually did a day together on her horses. Another friend of mine met me out on the trail, and we did a day on bikes, on vintage bikes. We did, because part of it goes on the Brisbane Valley Rail Trail. It's just one day. You move from Linville to Blackbutt. And so we did a day on vintage bikes, which was hilarious because all these e-bikes were passing us. And it was just so like vintage bikes mean like they're not really designed to go on gravel. No, vintage Melbourne style bikes. Yeah. I was like, hey, we're gonna ride this section, and at that stage we weren't too far from home, so he just came up with a couple of vintage bikes that he had, and we rode that day. And then later down the track, I actually did 5.5 weeks with another trekker. Her name's Asha. She actually had completed 9 sections of the trail the year before me, and then she got off the trail and she went back to work, but had been wanting to get back on the trail and complete more sections, and so we made it work. She got in touch with me and we made it work. We met up in Ebor, and we hadn't met before. We just chatted through the Facebook group that the National Trail gives you access to when you become a member. Yeah, we started from Ebor and we walked 5.5 weeks together, and it was awesome. We did a very difficult section together, and so really glad that we had each other. And that was pretty much, that was probably one of the most difficult days of the whole trail, which was, I think it was about 8 river crossings of the Macleay River. And it's not that I haven't done, or she hadn't done river crossings before, but it was a strong current, and the rocks were slippery from like the algae that forms over it. Yeah. So we had to take that day extremely slowly. We had to find our footing for every single step. But it was a great day. We both felt very proud of like getting through that day. It was a tough one. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I had people come out to the trail and see me. And then obviously I would use that opportunity to go to a shop or another town and get supplies. And then, later on...
So what was the longest you were with someone?
With Asha, 5.5 weeks.
Oh, wow.
And we walked together,
So what does it feel like the day after or the week after that, you go from back to solitary life and not having that?
Well,
do you notice it at all?
I suppose I'm quite comfortable being on my own, so it wasn't really a huge deal for me. But there was an adjustment period.
Like was an adjustment period
at the beginning? Yeah, at the very beginning.
With someone.
No. There was an adjustment period at the beginning of the trail when I first started walking on my own.
Alone,
yeah. Like I knew that it would hit me. I didn't know what it would look like, and I didn't know what it would feel like. But I knew at some point I would feel that, like that loneliness, I guess, that feeling, or whatever you want to call it. And then there was just I just sort of kind of realised that, you know, when you are approaching solitude, like I just gained a really healthy respect for connection. And I just felt that, like, entering solitude, you shouldn't enter that space, like, you know, as we all know, running away from something, or, you know, I don't know. But I just felt like entering that space of solitude, it's really important to have that respect for connection. And I think that's a healthy approach, knowing that it's almost a need. It's almost as high, it may be on the same level as water or food. Like, so, yeah, the sat device was really important for those times when you just wanted to send one message to, you know, just talk about, like, the subscription for my sat device went from the basic to the most expensive, so that I was having unlimited messages. And honestly, that was really helpful for those times, being on your own. But I didn't really miss anyone. I didn't feel like I was alone, I guess. But I did miss connection, because when I got it, I would be flat in mood, and then I would receive connection either because I'd hit a point where I had reception and I could have a conversation with a friend, or I'd hit a town and I had interaction with people. And that would just...
For context, we're hanging out in Kings Park on Fraser Avenue, and some people like to rev their vehicles to make sure people know they're here. We've got a beautiful view of the city.
It's beautiful. It's so lovely to be back here. I've got a lot of happy memories from Kings Park. The views are spectacular.
Come here for the school ball, get your photo taken.
Yes, correct.
Yeah. So I'm surprised. I guess it's the wrong time of year. They're all doing exams now. There's no kids up here taking school ball photos.
Oh, yeah.
I did a podcast once where I have like these little wireless microphones you use for filmmaking to wire up the actors, and we put them on and just walked through Kings Park in the middle of the night, and we got stuck and lost in the dark. It was kind of cool.
Naughty. You didn't have your maps with you?
No, because we're kind of like, well, we're in the middle of the city. How can you get lost? But then you forget how big Kings Park is.
Yeah, it's huge, actually. And
this is when the iPhone was kind of newish, so I probably did have GPS on my phone, but it's not something we're used to using all the time.
Yeah, anyway. And I think the sound can be disorientating sometimes, how it travels, so that could have been confusing for you too.
Anyway, you can go back in the archives and listen to that if you want.
Oh, yeah.
I'd probably be a bit embarrassing now because it's probably like 15 years old or something. I'll probably get cancelled from something I said. I don't know. Oh, yeah. So I brought up, was there a readjustment when you start walking with someone after being alone for a while?
Yeah, there was. Yeah.
If you different paces and...
Yeah, 100%. So we talked it over, I guess, and just said, look, if we're on days, like, there could be a day where Asher would walk further ahead and I would walk behind, just because of how we're feeling or whatever. Or it just depends. Like, people have different paces. Like, if I had been walking with a male, they probably were gaining a lot more distance than, like, if they would, like, you're quite tall, so you would probably, your pace and your steps would actually be longer. But we did figure out that we both roughly had a similar, like, it was about 4 kilometres. We were both able to do about 4 kilometres an hour, but she was slightly taller, and most of the time she was a little bit further ahead of me. And yeah, so, and then I suppose my approach during the days I would just stop when I wanted to. So we just had to figure out, like, doing breaks and what's going to work best. But, there were times where she would pull up and then I would walk up, and then I would have we would have a break together. Other times, because she was moving a little bit quicker than me, she actually would be able to take a few more breaks, which she wanted, and I would continue on and I wouldn't break as much. But so we'd always catch up with each other, and often we were really not that far apart, and we'd always kind of walk into camp together, and we'd kind of suss out where we were both going to pitch our tents or whatever, because they were different sizes, and mostly it was just like sharing the great moments together, to be honest. It was nice to be able to share those really cool experiences with someone else and not just be like, hey.
Oh yeah, I've done a bunch of solo trips. I'm like, I wish I could just, you take a photo of it and put it on Instagram, but you don't. Yeah, it just doesn't do justice. Sometimes I wish someone was here just to witness how cool this thing I'm doing is. Like,
yeah. So that was really fun, and like we got to know each other really well, and yeah, we would chat to each other through our tents and stuff, and yeah, it was like a really nice time, and I really appreciate having walked with someone else for a period of that time. And I wanted that experience as well. I wanted to not just have the skills to walk on my own. I wanted the skills to be able to walk with someone else and work as a team. Like I wanted to be able to show that I could, just show myself that I was able to do that, because that's another it's just part of the challenge. And everything that I faced, it was just like, okay, well, this is a new challenge and I just want to work through this.
Yeah, we had quite an awkward situation where a husband and wife, it is obviously a location where it's like, you go ahead, I'll meet you at Donley River Cafe or the general store. But we had a couple have a full bust up in the middle of the cafe because he had come earlier and he couldn't find her, and he was expecting to find her there, and then he went off, and then she came along and had her burger, and then he came back and found her having the burger, and he's like, where the F have you been? You were meant to wait for me in this. It was awkward, but I guess, working as a team, to make sure, you agree to meet someone at some point, because it's like, you can't text them if there's no signal out there to say, I didn't wait for you, sorry.
Yeah, well, we had our SAT devices connected,
so
we were able to, we could, if there was, for whatever reason, we needed to communicate with each other that way, we tested it and we could do it. So, but there is sometimes a delay with the SAT device, but it worked out really well, and we were pretty much on the same page with everything. Our approaches were slightly different, probably, but like when it came to how we were feeling and just like where we wanted to rest or where we would stay, say if we got into a town or whatever, we were mostly pretty much on the same page. So it was really cool to just be able to slip right in and just kind of make it happen together.
Were you managing a budget on you?
Yeah, I was. And so when I was feeling mostly fine, I would stay at the van parks if I got into a town. And then if I was feeling like I needed that respite, I would stay usually at a pub hotel room, and on the odd occasion I would stay in motels, in country town motels. Yeah, it just depends what you were kind of... Yeah, so I was sort of managing it that way, and I tried to just make sure that most of my supplies had been purchased beforehand. Basically, I was mostly spending money on food.
Yes.
And that was when I was getting into the towns and villages, and I was just like eating and then... Yeah, and the girl who walked ahead of me, she's really funny. She called it pretty much just a big pub crawl.
Yeah.
But I would get into small towns and head to the pub, and I would be thinking about a beer the whole time I was walking. But when I got there, I was like, just give me a fizzy drink. I just need like a Coke or a Fanta or a Solo. So I couldn't really...
To warm up to the beer, or just...
on the odd occasion, sometimes to warm up to the beer, but not always. Sometimes it ended up being like 2 soft drinks, when I don't even usually drink soft drinks, which is again that thing of that trail version of you and the outside, well, not the outside, but the everyday life version of you.
Yeah, I haven't done overnight backpacking, multi-day backing since high school. And which is something I need to correct because it's like I'm surrounded by the whole sort of industry at the moment, and I just have this FOMO, or what do you call it? FOMO, fear of or jealousy. I'm like, why am I serving them burgers and not hiking myself?
You gotta do it.
But I do go on regular. One of the reasons I moved into the forest myself is that I'm sort of 45 minutes from a lot of the great walks, all in our corner of the state. And so I just, use drive there. I walk for a few hours in and a few hours out, just by myself. It's very inefficient because if you had a friend, you have 2 cars, you can do end to end, and drive the cars back and forth. Anyways, sometimes you go camping and you take some wine out, and because you're like, oh, I can just sip wine and stare at the stars and maybe listen to an audiobook, and it's like, oh, that was so lovely. But then you're like, why do I do that? Because then I'm going to hike 20 k's the next day up a mountain or whatever, and then you've just got all this wine in your system.
Oh,
and you're hungover.
No, I feel completely different.
Yeah,
I'm like, I mean, it depends, because I was just like, out on the national trail, I was experiencing a lot more exhaustion. But if I'm going on a multi-day walk, I will definitely take some form of alcohol.
Yes.
And it will most likely be red wine, and it will most likely
How do you store it? Do you keep
drunk.
it in the little box, the bag box?
I've tried a few different things. Yeah, there's like the cask ones. There's the cask ones that you can get, and it's got like a handle, and it's sort of like got a little.
Oh yeah.
And it's like a 1.5 litre. I've done that. I've also decanted into like other kind of bladders.
Like a camel bag.
Yeah. Well, similar. Yeah.
What do you call?
I've got like one that's called I think it's called a hydro pack, I think. But yeah, you can put them in those, and there's like a few different little bladders and things that are out there that you can just like pour them into. So obviously it's not going to be fresh, but yeah, with friends, it's so good, and I find that like I actually don't get hungover.
Yeah.
So I actually feel better, than I would say if I was drinking red wine with a group of friends out for dinner or whatever. I do recall this one particular day. I had a really tough day ahead of me, and I was like, okay, I'm going to take one of those half bottles of red wine, and I decanted it into one of my little bladders, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to save it for that really tough day that I have, so when I get to the top I can drink my red wine. And then the next day I was planning on having a rest day up there in the national park. It was like I think it was an 800 metre climb that day, but it was very steep on a they called it the Razorback 4-wheel drive track, and that was up just out of Billawilla, I believe. I made it up this insane track. I left at about 6:30, and I had to time my brakes just because it was just so steep. So I was moving fast, but I wasn't gaining much distance. And I ended up getting to a point where I chose to continue walking at night. I wasn't going to have to walk that long, and I knew that I was coming into an actual campground where people can drive into, because there was 2 access points to this particular campground. It was up at Croomba Tops, yeah. So you can access it a couple of ways, and one way is up this crazy 4-wheel drive track that some people do, and there's all these signs before you head up the track that it's like, be warned, 4-wheel drives get stuck up here, and like you make sure you've got the right vehicle and all of that. Anyway, so went up that, got to camp, set up, was completely exhausted, like one of the most exhausting days I've ever had. My body just felt completely trashed. And I was just like poured my wine because I had brought it to celebrate that moment, and I just looked at it and I was so tired, so tired that I just like tried to drink it and I just couldn't drink it. I was so tired. I was just like, I just need to drop dead.
Yeah.
And so I just fell asleep, and yeah, it wasn't really the triumphant moment that I was planning on, but yeah. I had some left over and I drank it the next day. It was actually more enjoyable, even though, yeah.
It was a bit oxidised.
Yeah, it was totally oxidised. It still tasted better.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's amazing the things that taste better when you've sort of been, pushing yourself and using it as a reward. Did you see any cool, you must have, because you're out there for a year, but like top wildlife interactions? Anything you're like, wow, I can't believe I saw that?
Yeah, I think There was this moment on the Man River, which was just not far from Glen Innes, and it was just this unexpected, just stunning river. It just blew my mind. There was all these boulders and rocks along the side. It looked like it was from a different country, and I had to pull up and walk down and get a better view. And I remember walking down, and I must have startled a dingo, and it just jumped into the water and it swam across the river, and I saw it move away onto the other side, and I got it on video, but it's just this tiny little figure in the distance. But that was a special moment. I'm not too sure why. It was just incredible to see a dingo swimming, I think.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
I know dogs can swim. All animals can swim, but it was just interesting to actually see it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so, yeah, that was a pretty special moment. I really enjoyed that one. But, yeah, mostly I just scared the wildlife away because I am such a noisy walker.
All right. Do you listen to podcasts or music or anything like that?
Yeah, if it's a road where there's vehicles and stuff, I'll put it on as speaker and just on like loudspeaker, and I'll podcast music. It just helps with motivation. I mean, I know there's a bit of controversy with people like doing hiking and listening to music and stuff like that, but for me it was motivation, and there was really no one around, so I wasn't disturbing anyone. But yeah, it was great. I loved it. I listened to a lot of the ABC conversations. I listened to actually a lot of true crime. I had to stop. There was a period where I couldn't.
Spooked?
Yeah, there was a period where I couldn't listen, and the true crime was like in like forests and stuff like that, and I was like, okay, I can't. And so there was for a chunk of in the middle, I couldn't listen to true crime, and then towards the end again, I was listening to it, which was interesting.
I'm forgetting the names, but there's quite a few famous Australian serial killers who just like to target hikers in the middle of nowhere.
Okay, we won't go there.
Okay.
No, just kidding.
Yeah, on that mountain that I failed to climb because I was dehydrated, and I guess maybe I hallucinated it, but because I was going crazy, but because you're on this like flat plain, there's a mountain, and there's this point in the hill where you're quite high up, and there's obviously this big wind going, but you're in the shelter of the mountain, so you can't feel the wind. But there's obviously this wind going around. I'm sure wind's probably the wrong term, but air currents going around the mountain that you can't feel because you're in the shelter of the mountain, but it's just below. You can probably reach out and feel it. And I just turned around and saw a giant wedge-tailed eagle. Probably a 3 meter, a wingspan taller than a tall human, and he's just floating in the air right in front of me because he's in the air current pocket, and he's able to just hover, and I'm on the mountain. I could almost touch him, and that's probably the most amazing wildlife moment I've ever had, because it's just, they're big, because like I see them on the side of the road eating roadkill, and then they fly away. You're like, holy crap, when they extend their wings. But just seeing it actually flying like right in front of you, like hovering, it was just like, I feel like this is the most surreal thing I've ever seen in my life. But that was pretty cool.
No, I bet that would have been birds of prey. There's just something so majestic, but also just so, I don't know, just like, so they just draw you in. Yeah.
And I guess that's the moral of that story, is like I failed to get to the top of that mountain, and I felt a bit embarrassed about it, that I almost died. But I had this amazing moment so it's the journey that counts, all that stuff.
100%. It's always the journey. And, I don't see that as a failure. Yeah. I never see, like, so many times I was like over ambitious with the distances I was hoping to gain, or just whatever, but it's the fact that you came back down alive in one piece without injuries and without complete dehydration, that's success.
Yeah.
So I don't see that as a failure at all. And actually you had that amazing experience. So it's actually a win. And that's what happened to me so many times. Like, I would aim to get to this point, wouldn't get there, and just be like, okay, well, I still got a lot that I wanted to do done, and I still achieved quite a bit. And I had all of these amazing experiences, or something came up in my day, and that was magical.
Now, you obviously had this goal in mind to get to Healesville, Victoria, but spoiler alert, you ended up keep on going to Tasmania.
Yeah.
At one point, like, how was your mind rationalizing, okay, I make it to Healesville and I'm complete. I feel like I've completed a goal, but there's something in your mind going, I can keep going to Tasmania. Like, what?
Yeah. I was in a town called Kilwickeven, and I just started chatting to this fella, and he mentioned the Tasmanian Trail, and I had already heard about it on the trail a few months prior, and when he brought it up, I started looking into it a bit more, and it was pretty much at that stage that I thought I wanted to continue on, but I didn't really want to express it yet or kind of voice it outwardly, because I just wanted to finish the National Trail, and I wanted to finish that successfully. And for me, successfully is, mostly in one piece, in good spirits, in good health, feeling positive about my experience, feeling happy about the things that I've achieved. So I didn't really want to go ahead with that until I knew that was done. So I was in the background making plans to go to Tasmania, and there was a few people who knew that was going to happen, but I wasn't really ready to kind of announce it to my community that was what I was about to do until I had, made it to the finish line of the National Trail. Because there was just so many obstacles up in the air first, and so I was like, I need to finish this one goal first.
So yeah, what were you feeling like walking into Healesville?
I don't know. Like, I think I had imagined that moment so much that when it happened, it just felt really good. Like, when I had imagined it in the past, I kind of would get emotional about thinking about it. But when it actually happened, I was just so happy. Like, I was just so happy that I had made it, and it was almost disbelief. And actually, when I came home, sometimes I'm like, did that even happen? Like, did that, yes. Do you know what I mean? It was just like, wow. It almost felt like someone else had done it and it wasn't me.
Yeah, I
don't know how to explain it. It was quite a unique feeling. And it was like I was celebrating this accomplishment, but it wasn't me who did it, but it was me who did it.
Yeah.
And I was so lucky. I had two of my best friends come meet me there, and they just made the whole experience very special.
Were they from Victoria? Or
yeah,
were they
one was from Victoria, and one flew from country New South Wales, or from Northern Rivers, New South Wales, near where I live. And, they surprised me with some bubbles and a little finish line banner. And I actually had a few other people come meet me on the trail, who I'd met on the trail, and they knew that I was finishing, and they wanted to come and see me at the end because they were from Victoria, they lived near there. So it was really beautiful that they made that time to come and see me. And yeah, it just goes to show you the connections that you make out on the trail. They're often important and significant, but they happen very quickly over a very short period of time. So they're unique relationships and unique friendships that you make. Yeah.
We'll have to wrap up soon, but I'll put Trinity's Instagram in the show notes for this, so you can go. I assume it's a public account.
Yes, it is. And I am planning to put more content about the walk. As you know, it's not a place I love to be in. But I do.
You should probably get rather than do something a longer form and put it on YouTube.
Yeah, I've got some ideas, but we'll see how that goes.
I guess it's quite because you've got a year's worth of content. It's like quite oh my God, I have to sort through that.
I mean, I don't mind looking back on it because it is for me, it's all good memories for me. So I actually really enjoy looking at it all, and I do sometimes I think about the trail often. But
having withdrawal symptoms,
not quite. But yeah, I wouldn't mind doing a little walk or something. That would be nice.
Have you done the Bilderman?
I haven't. I would love to. But so it's just been quite busy since coming home, going back to work and then volunteering and then...
What's it like going back to work?
Oh my God, it was amazing. It was actually amazing. I was just... when I got back, there was about a 6-week period when I was just... The first week was a bit funny because I was just kind of readjusting, and there was just my body was just recovering. Like I had 3 days of like waves of chills and just like super achy body, like almost like fever. And then that sort of just settled. So I was basically just like kind of on the couch and just kind of watching streaming platforms and just eating. And and then I was like emerging out into society, and I felt really weird because I had been, even though I was like, I was an anonymous person to so many people. Like I was talking to people and I was in contact with a lot of people and meeting strangers on the street or in towns and stuff like that. But like I was anonymous to them. Like I didn't really, there was no connection. So going back into society, that was like kind of a little obstacle. Driving again, I remember getting up to 110 and I'm like, whoa, this is so scary.
Yeah.
Like my feet aren't on the ground. And like I had a couple of weird eating habits as well. Like I was kind of like scraping my bowl. And then I remember my friend pointed out to me, he's like, oh, I think you're done there. Like I think the food's all gone, but you just get so used to like just scraping every
calorie
bit
out of it.
Oh yeah, and also it's easier for cleaning.
Yes. True.
So like your pot is just like scraped clean. So yeah, that was a bit of a funny week. And then, but yeah, little by little was just kind of running errands. And then it was about 6 weeks of just bliss. Just like everything was making me so happy, so fulfilled, changing the temperature at a flick of a switch, just regulating. Like I can turn the fan on because I'm hot. I can turn the heater on because I'm cold. Washing dishes with a plug and a sink, this is a bit naughty, but wearing a garment once and then putting it in the washing machine. Like I was just like having a wardrobe again. Like everything was just like so fulfilling. So going back to work I was just so happy. Going back to volunteering, like it was just, all of it just was bringing me so much joy. But yeah, it's the schedule has filled up quickly. And as you know, I'm here right now with family. So just spending some time with my folks and
Wow.
Yeah, so I will get to putting more content up on my Instagram.
The stuff, anyway, what I was going to say, the stuff that there is already awesome. She's going to put more stuff up.
Well, I think I only got, like, some of the posts are only up to, like, not even halfway, and then some of the reels that probably continue on from all the way to Tasmania, the reels do.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, I had one day I was thinking way too much about your Instagram going, like, I wish Instagram gave you a feature so you can create your own timeline, like a playlist, like on YouTube.
Yeah, exactly.
So you can just say, hey, this is, if you want to watch it in chronological order, here you go.
Yeah, I know. It's
one of the most amazing things on your thing was you went on, I've already forgotten the name, but you went on this other alpine track.
Yep, the Australian Alpine walking track, yep.
Yes, and is that where all the amazing cute huts are?
Yes, yep, that's hut life through there. Hut life.
Just, they are the most perfect, most Instagrammy perfect little cute huts made of weathered wood and metal.
Each one with their own little personality and little history, and just like, yes, it was a fun time through there. Yeah.
So was it busier on that?
It was, yeah.
Because that's more a traditional hiking trail?
Yeah. Okay. But most people who do the Australian Alps walking track, they will have food drops and they will place them at certain points. But at that point, I was so comfortable with following the format of the National Trail, which was walking into a town, picking up my supplies that I had sent to me by Australia Post, and then continuing on again, that I actually would walk off the trail into a town that I could see. Mm-hmm. I'd do like a day's walk.
Extra walk.
At one point, I think I did 2 days extra walking, and then could find different ways around.
And were you just following a road, or there were already walking paths
mostly roads
to the town?
Just mostly roads. There was a place where there was a few tracks around, but I was mostly on roads, and so it was really cool because I would walk into the town and I'd have a couple of days rest there, so I'd be able to, have food at the pub, I'd pick up my mail, I'd have food at the general store, and by that stage they'd known me and I'd known them, and I felt comfortable to accept a ride back to the trail if they offered it to me. Yeah. But, that didn't always work out, but if it did, I didn't often accept rides. I kind of had a rule that I wouldn't unless they were associated with the trail or if I had developed some sort of rapport with them. But I also just tried mostly just I wanted to walk it. And the only times that I did accept rides were because things may have been going wrong, like I wasn't feeling well or it just worked out better with logistics or, you know, I wanted to spend some time with the station owner and that delayed me for the day, so they drove me a little bit further ahead. Like, you know, that was... because it's all about trying to balance that experience because it's not just a trail, it's an actual... You know, you're going in and out of people's lives.
Yeah.
Especially when some of these stations, they're so remote. So having those chats and it can be really nice just to kind of compare like your worlds and get to know each other for just one little moment. So, yeah.
I've got two things I got to ask you before we wrap up.
Yes.
I got one really geeky question. What was like the longest you went without civilization, like being able to charge your phone?
Well, I was carrying batteries.
That's what I was going to ask.
Do you mean like an electrical socket?
No, yeah, like what were you carrying to keep your phone and satellite phone charged?
Yeah, I had like a solar charger.
So it would charge on your back of your backpack?
Yeah, but when I went into the Alpine region, because when you get the guidebooks for that, they do say that when you're in colder climates, it can drain the batteries of devices. And so I just chose to carry a second battery pack and then that I would carry them close to my body to keep them warm, just so that I didn't risk, because I relied so heavily on my gadgets for navigation. I think
your guide was on the
phone. And my maps and everything. Like I did have the guidebook version for the Australian Alps walking track, and but I was essentially relying a lot on my gadgets, and I was using them for documenting. I was listening to podcasts. I was listening to music.
Yeah.
It was my phone was my control center. So it was really important for me to make sure that was, because also I was mostly using my sat device through my mobile phone.
Oh yeah, because it connects up.
Yeah. You can send messages on the sat device manually, but it just takes a lot longer.
The other thing I was going to ask you about, it's one of those things that you might really want to talk about, or you just don't want to talk about it, but traveling as a woman alone, going back to what we were just about speaking about, like there's obviously, I hear the female hikers sort of talking about that in the hiking cafe. There's obviously like safety concerns and stuff like that. Were you talking about your safety plan?
Yeah.
It's not just for snakes and stuff like that, right?
No. Yeah, it was to make sure that I was still around. Yeah. And a risk to not being around could come from an animal, could come from a fall, could come from an injury, could come from, someone wanting to do malice to you. So, yeah, that was a concern. That was...
Is it something?
But it was at the end of the day, it was like, do I not do this because I have fears, or do I just try and make sure that I can work around these issues? And I had negative interactions here or there, and they would stick with you for most of the day because there's they throw you off a little bit, but I would manage to shake them. But yeah, I would recommend highly having unlimited sat device subscriptions so you can kind of talk things through with the outside. Just get a bit of a soundboard of whether your fear is valid or like kind of a bit elevated. Yes. Or, also obviously always listen to your gut. But yeah, it's scary. It's part of it. Like I remember speaking to a lady and she's like, do you get scared? And I'm like, yeah, every night.
Yeah.
But what's the other option? To just not do it. Yeah. And that wasn't an option for me. You just hope that you've got the skills, you've got the verbal ability, you've got the you just hope. It's not like you want something bad to happen, but you hope that you have enough skills to be able to work with difficult situations, whether they come from an animal, the terrain, the weather, or a person. Yeah.
Let's talk about something happy. Like, what was your, to wrap up, what was, like, is there something you like, oh, that was my favourite sort of moment that's like I could have only experienced because I made this decision to do this?
Do you know,
that you maybe didn't expect before you went into it?
it's actually life-changing.
Wow.
The way that you perceive everything changes.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's because you do... I don't know if it's because of the trail or if it's because I walked for so long. Because
Yes.
it was 14 months I was out there, and I don't know whether it was a time thing over the actual trail thing. I mean, or a combination of both, maybe. Just the experience and the hardships that you kind of have to maneuver through. But it just sort of, makes you see things from an angle that perhaps you didn't see it before. And it's not like it's a great shift. It's just like a slight difference. Maybe it makes you even more empathetic, or it makes you a little bit more patient. I'm not too sure. And I'm not this could change. Like maybe the stresses of life come back into my everyday routine, and then that sort of perception changes. But for now, there is like this slight change of how you see things and how you cope and how you manage your confidence.
Yeah.
So I think maybe it's not that there's one particular thing that I'd be like, that's why it was worth it, but it was more just like that commitment and the personal growth and the space. Because what happens when you are out on the trail is you are able to isolate thoughts and emotions, so you can process them without the distractions of everyday life. So, there is that constant personal growth that, I'm just so grateful for.
Is that one of the reasons you did it?
No, not really. I knew that it would affect my life. I mostly just wanted an incredible life experience. I wanted some great stories to tell, and I wanted to help our native wildlife.
Hell yeah. You should talk about that. I don't know if your page is still going, but I assume they could donate directly if that wasn't. But tell them what to do if you liked hearing a story.
Yes, please.
Trinity's story.
So on my Instagram page and my Facebook page, there are links to the GoFundMe. Those donations go directly to the Byron Bay Wildlife Hospital, not to me. And basically, those donations go towards assisting animals get x-rays, anaesthesia, treatment, hospitalisation, fluids, food. These are all injured animals that have come into the hospital, or orphaned animals. So, if you are wanting to donate to the Byron Bay Wildlife Hospital through my GoFundMe, you can go to my Instagram. It will be open for a little bit longer. I've just got some posts that I want to put up, and then I'll close it off at some time so that it will be finished. But if you're interested, then that would be extremely appreciated, and the Byron Bay Wildlife Hospital community would be overjoyed as well.
I think you got to, just to wrap up, I think you got to actually visit it on the way at some point. Yeah,
so about halfway when I hit the border, I was initially planning on taking 2 weeks off because I was having some troubles with my feet. I went to the foot doctor, and he was basically like, if you want to prevent a stress fracture, you should take as long as possible off. So I ended up taking 4 weeks off. And during that time, my mum came to see me, which was awesome. And I also got to do some volunteering while I was on that break. And I went to go visit the Byron Bay Wildlife Hospital and just see all the amazing stuff that they're doing, speak to the staff there. And
you had been there before?
I had been there before. We do occasionally take our injured animals that come into the Tweed Valley Wildlife Carers there. But now since being back...
But you just drop them off?
We just drop them off. Yeah. And then sometimes they come back out to us. So so what happens at the hospitals is they get the immediate assessment, diagnosis, and then they get treatment, and then they come back out to carers. I don't care. I do other roles within our group. I'm on the hotline. I receive phone calls from members of the public who have come across injured, orphaned or sick animals. And then I also do rescues and transporting. So I'll go out and get birds mostly, and then I'll take them to hospitals or whatever, to either the Byron Bay Wildlife Hospital or the Currumbin Wildlife Hospital, which is just over the Queensland border. And then,
No, it's really cool. Yeah, there's some people in our community who do that. It's really important because we live in a forest. You just come across animals on the road all the time.
Yeah.
And it's good that I touch wood, I haven't had to call it yet, but I have a number saved in my phone of like, who to call because you're in the middle of nowhere, to try and work out, can we do anything in this situation?
Yeah. But I'm also volunteering at the Byron Bay Wildlife Sanctuary, which is connected to the hospital. And so I've been lucky enough to start. I've cleaned out some enclosures and helped out with a tawny frogmouth called Lucy.
Oh, cool.
Also in that same enclosure is Pebbles. She's had an injury to her foot, so can't be released back into the wild, but she's a very cute little character.
Tawny frogmouth?
Yep, the tawny frogmouth was Lucy, and Pebbles was the bushstone curlew. Sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, yep. And I assisted one of the keepers give a cutie pie, a short-eared possum, some eye treatment and some antibiotics for its eye. So yeah, that's been really fun.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on. It's lived up to expectations. It's kind of in the background. I've been looking forward to it. It's surreal to be like, oh, hey, you're doing this really cool thing. Come talk on my podcast about it. And it's really cool. You have to go check out her Instagram or Facebook page, whatever you prefer, and see some stuff, because I've actually sent it to a few people, your page now, just and there's this lady who's probably going to do it now. She's like, she quit. She was actually working in our hiking cave. She's done the Bibbulin before, and she's like, I'm looking for something. And I'm like, hey, I've got just the person for you. So I don't know if she's been stalking you or not, but
oh, cool. No, thank you.
She's that kind of person, and I'm like, I wonder if she's actually going to do it just because I said to do it. That'd be cool.
Well, no, I appreciate you following.
Would you recommend it to someone?
Absolutely, yeah. It's like I said, it's life changing, but you have to have the commitment there, I think, to see it through. But no, I appreciate you so much for the words of support that you have given me, the times that we've been in touch and things that we've talked about. They've been really good to just land.
Part of your connection to reality. Yeah,
absolutely, and it's still it's nice to be able to talk about what I'm doing, and so I appreciate that, James. Thank you.
No worries. Do you know how to say your username? Instagram? I'll definitely put in the show notes, but in case people don't know how to use podcast show notes. Yeah, so my Instagram is probably the best place to go. So it's 333.walk there, and it's spelled TRIPLETHREE .walk there, WALKTHERE. Awesome. Have a good night. You too. Bye. Bye.